It was early morning, the kind of quiet hour when most of the city was still half asleep. The streets were misty, the sun barely peeking over the rooftops, and only a few cars passed through the empty road. Alina had just finished her overnight shift at a small diner on the edge of town. Her uniform smelled faintly of coffee and fried eggs, and her feet ached from standing all night. She was tired but content. She had managed to cover another week's rent. As she drove her old car toward home, she hummed softly to a tune playing on the radio. It was her little routine after work, something that helped her unwind before crawling into bed for a few hours of sleep. The air outside was cool, and the sky was beginning to blush with the first light of dawn. She stopped at a red light, rubbing her eyes, thinking about the warm shower waiting for her at home. But in the next few seconds, everything changed. A loud crash echoed from up ahead, breaking the calm. Alina's eyes snapped open, and she looked toward the sound. About 200 feet ahead, a silver car had slammed into the divider at the curve. Sparks flew as the metal twisted, and within seconds, smoke began to rise from under the hood. The car was badly crumpled at the front, and steam hissed into the cold air. At first, she thought maybe she should just call for help. She grabbed her phone, hands trembling slightly, and dialed emergency services. But before she could even explain the location, a small, high-pitched cry reached her ears. It wasn't the cry of an adult, it was the desperate sound of a child. Her heart dropped. Without thinking twice, Alina threw open her car door and ran toward the wreck. The heat was growing, the smell of gasoline thick in the air. She could hear people shouting in the distance, but no one was moving closer. Cars slowed down. Some drivers rolled down their windows to stare, but fear kept them from stepping out. The car's front was now on fire, small flames licking up around the engine. "Someone's in there," Alina shouted, coughing from the smoke. A man standing nearby shouted back, "Wait! The car might explode. The fire trucks are coming." But she didn't stop. Her shoes slipped on the asphalt as she ran closer, one arm covering her mouth and nose. Through the window she saw movement. A small figure in the back seat, a toddler strapped in a car seat, crying uncontrollably. The driver's seat was empty. Maybe the parent had gone to get help or had been thrown out. But the child was trapped. Alina tried the rear door. It wouldn't budge. The heat made the handle too hot to touch. She backed up, searching desperately for something to use. Her eyes fell on a broken brick near the divider. She grabbed it and slammed it against the window once, twice, 3 times. The sound was deafening. Glass cracking but not breaking. The child inside screamed louder, his tiny hands kicking helplessly against the seatbelt. "Come on, come on," she muttered to herself, sweat and soot mixing on her forehead. With one final swing, the glass shattered, scattering shards everywhere. The rush of smoke was so strong it made her cough and gag. She leaned inside, trying to unbuckle the straps. The metal clip was jammed. Her fingers shook, trying to pry it open while the child screamed louder, terrified by the noise and fire. It's okay, I've got you," she said, her voice shaking but gentle. Her hands were burning. Her lungs felt heavy with smoke, but she refused to stop. Finally, the buckle came loose. She lifted the little boy into her arms and stumbled back just as a loud pop erupted from the front of the car, the tires bursting from heat. Flames were spreading fast now, crawling toward the back seats. Alina turned and ran, clutching the child tightly. Her legs felt like they were on fire too, every muscle screaming for her to stop. When she reached a safe distance, she dropped to her knees on the grass beside the road, coughing hard. The child was sobbing against her chest, his face streaked with tears and ash. "It's okay, you're safe now," she whispered, brushing his hair out of his eyes. A few people rushed over, finally breaking out of their shock. Someone offered a blanket. Another person poured water into Alina's hands so she could cool the burns on her palms. The little boy clung to her like she was the only safe thing in the world. Her chest rose and fell fast, adrenaline still running wild. Behind them, the car's flames roared higher. Within minutes, sirens filled the air. Fire trucks, police, and ambulances. The firefighters quickly doused the burning car, but it was already too late for the vehicle. It was a blackened wreck. One of the paramedics approached her, urging, "Ma'am, you need to sit down. You inhaled a lot of smoke." "I'm fine," she said between breaths. "Just check the kid, please." They took the boy from her arms carefully, wrapping him in a clean blanket. He reached back toward her, still crying. Alina forced a weak smile and said softly, "You're safe now, sweetheart. You're okay." She sat on the curb, hands trembling, realizing what had just happened. Her mind felt blank. Like everything had slowed down after the chaos. People began recording videos, taking pictures, murmuring in disbelief about what they had just witnessed. Someone mentioned the car's license plate, saying it looked familiar, but Alina wasn't listening. Her ears rang, her vision slightly blurred from exhaustion and the smoke. Minutes later, another vehicle, a sleek black SUV, pulled up fast. The door swung open, and a tall man in a business suit jumped out, his face pale with fear. He ran straight toward the ambulance where the toddler was being checked. "Ethan!" he shouted, his voice cracking. "My son!" The moment the little boy heard the voice, he turned and reached out his arms. The man scooped him up, holding him close, tears spilling down his cheeks. For a moment, everyone fell silent, watching the reunion. Even the firefighters paused. Alina watched quietly from where she sat, her heart softening. She could tell by the man's reaction that he was the father, his whole body shaking, his face buried against his child's hair. The man whispered something to the boy, rocking him gently, then looked up when one of the paramedics pointed toward Alina. Their eyes met. He walked over, still holding his son. His face was a mix of disbelief, gratitude, and shock. His suit was immaculate, his watch expensive, but in that moment none of it mattered. He crouched down in front of her, the weight of the morning heavy in his expression. "Were you the one who pulled him out?" he asked softly. Alina nodded, trying to stand, but he quickly gestured for her to stay seated. His voice trembled as he said, You saved his life. If you hadn't been here." He stopped, unable to finish the sentence. She looked at the boy, who had stopped crying now and was staring at her with wide, innocent eyes. "I just did what anyone would have done," she said quietly. But the man shook his head slowly. "No," he said firmly. "Not anyone would run into a burning car." He sat down beside her for a moment, still holding his son tightly. The world around them felt distant. The flashing lights, the noise, the smoke, it all faded. The man took a deep breath and said, almost in a whisper, "You didn't just save my son. You saved my entire world." Alina didn't know what to say. Her hands were still shaking, small burns visible on her skin, but her heart was calm. For the first time in a long while, she felt something she hadn't felt before, a quiet sense of purpose. The paramedics came back, insisting again that she go to the hospital for treatment. The man nodded, promising he would follow. As she was guided into the ambulance, she glanced back one last time. The father was holding his boy close, tears still in his eyes, watching her as if he never wanted to forget her face. Inside the ambulance, as it drove away, Alina leaned back against the seat. The smell of smoke clung to her hair and clothes, and her palms stung from the burns, but none of that mattered. She closed her eyes, hearing the little boy's cries echo faintly in her mind. The moment she had heard them was the moment everything had changed. That morning had started like any other, quiet and ordinary. But now she knew her life would never quite be the same again. The ride to the hospital felt longer than it really was. Alina sat on the stretcher, her hands bandaged, her throat sore from the smoke. The paramedic sitting beside her kept checking her pulse and asking if she felt dizzy. She nodded every now and then, but said little. Her mind was still stuck on the image of that car in flames, the smell of burning metal, the sound of that child's cries. Every few seconds, the memory replayed in her head like a scene she couldn't pause. When the ambulance stopped, nurses came rushing to help her inside. She was given oxygen, her burns were cleaned, and the doctor gently scolded her for running into a fire without any protection. She just smiled faintly and said, "I didn't have time to think." After a while, she was told to rest in one of the observation rooms. The nurse drew the curtain around her bed, dimming the lights. Alina lay there, her body aching, her throat dry, but her thoughts were still outside that room, with the little boy. She didn't even know his name. She wondered if he was okay, if he was scared, if his father had managed to calm him down. A few hours later, the door opened softly. Alina turned her head and saw the same man who had been at the scene, the child's father. He wasn't wearing the same crisp suit anymore. The jacket was gone, the sleeves rolled up, and his face still showed signs of stress. In his arms, he carried a small box of fruits and some flowers. "Hi," he said quietly, stepping inside. "Can I come in?" She nodded. He placed the things on the small table beside her bed and sat down on the chair. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The room was quiet except for the beeping of the monitor beside her. Finally, he looked up and said, The doctor said you'll be fine. Just some burns and smoke inhalation. I've been through worse, she said, trying to make light of it, but her voice came out rough. He gave a small smile. I don't think many people have been through what you did today. He paused, then added softly, You saved my son's life. I don't even know how to thank you for that. You don't need to, she said quickly. I just did what I had to. But he shook his head. You didn't have to. You could have stayed in your car like everyone else. You could have waited for help, but you didn't. He looked down at his hands, voice trembling slightly. If you hadn't been there, I don't even want to think about it. Alina looked at him carefully. He seemed like someone used to being in control. Confident, powerful, someone who probably ran big meetings and made big decisions every day. But right now, sitting across from her, he looked human in the simplest, rawest way. Just a father who had almost lost his child. How is he? She asked softly. The man's face softened. He's fine. Just a few bruises and some scratches. The doctor said he's incredibly lucky. He paused, looking at her with emotion in his eyes. You're the reason for that luck. Alina felt her throat tighten. She didn't know what to say. She just nodded, smiling faintly. After a moment, he leaned back and took a deep breath. My name is Daniel, he said, offering his hand. She hesitated for a second, then shook it gently. Alina, he repeated as if wanting to remember it. I run a company downtown. The car you saw. It was being driven by one of my employees. He was taking my son to daycare because I had an early meeting. I don't know what went wrong, but when I got the call, they told me there'd been a crash. When I reached there and saw you holding him, he stopped, rubbing his forehead. I can't explain what that felt like. Alina's eyes softened. He's safe now. That's what matters. Daniel nodded slowly, then said, You risked everything for someone you didn't even know. Not everyone would have done that, she shrugged. I didn't think about who he was. I just heard him cry. He smiled a little, the kind of smile that comes from both gratitude and disbelief. You know, people like you remind others that kindness still exists. Alina looked down at her bandaged hands, her voice quiet. I don't know about kindness. I just couldn't walk away. Daniel looked at her for a long time, then stood. Well, I want you to rest, but I'll come back tomorrow. I owe you more than I can ever repay. There's nothing to repay, she said quickly. But he only smiled and said, We'll see about that. He left the room, closing the door softly behind him. That night, as Alina lay awake, she couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. It all felt unreal, like something that belonged in a movie, not her life. She had always lived quietly, moving between her small apartment, her night shifts at the diner, and the few hours she had to herself. She had never imagined being part of a story that would make headlines. But that's exactly what happened the next day. When she woke up, a nurse came in holding her phone. You might want to check this, she said with a small smile. You're all over the news. Alina frowned, confused. She unlocked her phone and gasped. Every news channel was showing footage of the accident. The fire, the rescue, the moment she ran into the flames. Someone had recorded it all. Headlines read things like Brave Woman Saves Child from Burning Car and Real-Life Hero Risks Life for Stranger's Toddler. Her phone was flooded with messages from coworkers and even strangers online. People were calling her a hero. But Alina didn't feel like one. She felt ordinary, just someone who acted without thinking. Later that afternoon, Daniel returned, this time with his son. The little boy looked healthier, his arm wrapped in a tiny bandage, holding a toy car. When he saw Alina, his face lit up. He reached out his hands toward her, and Daniel smiled softly. He's been asking to see you, Daniel said. He keeps saying lady and pointing at the TV. Alina laughed gently as the boy climbed onto her bed and hugged her. Her heart melted instantly. Hey there, little hero, she said softly. You look much better. The boy giggled and buried his face in her shoulder. Daniel watched the two of them, a faint smile playing on his lips. He doesn't usually warm up to people this fast, he said quietly. I guess you made quite an impression. Alina stroked the boy's hair, her eyes soft. Kids just know when they're safe. There was a short silence. Then Daniel said, I've been thinking a lot about how to thank you. But honestly, there's no real way to repay something like this. Still, I want to do something. You really don't have to, Alina said quickly, looking up. I know, he replied, but I want to. He hesitated as if choosing his words carefully. You said you work nights at a diner? She nodded slowly. Yeah, it's not much, but it pays the bills. He leaned forward slightly. What if I told you I could help change that? Alina blinked, unsure what he meant. Change how? He smiled gently. Let's just say I have some resources. Maybe it's time someone helped you the way you helped us. She didn't know what to say. The idea of someone like him, a man with wealth and influence, and offering her help felt strange, almost uncomfortable. She had spent her whole life doing things on her own, struggling quietly but proudly. I don't want charity, she said softly. Daniel nodded, understanding. It's not charity. It's gratitude. He glanced at his son, then back at her. You saved the most important thing in my life. The least I can do is make sure your life becomes a little easier. Alina looked at him for a long moment. There was no arrogance in his voice, no pity, just honesty. For the first time, she believed that maybe he wasn't offering help out of guilt or obligation, but genuine respect. Just think about it, he said, standing up. I'll come back tomorrow. We'll talk then. He took his son's hand, ready to leave, but the little boy turned back toward Alina. He waved, his small fingers wiggling in the air. Bye-bye. Alina smiled. Bye, sweetheart. When they were gone, the room felt quiet again, but this time it wasn't empty. Something had changed, something she couldn't quite name. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was the strange comfort of knowing that out of something terrifying, something good might still come. As she looked out the window, sunlight streamed into the room, warm and soft. She rested her head against the pillow, her mind drifting. She didn't know what Daniel meant by changing her life, but deep down, she had a feeling that the story was far from over. That single moment, one scream, one decision, one rescue hour, had started a chain of events she could never have predicted. And though she didn't know it yet, what Daniel would say and do next would completely transform everything she thought she knew about herself, about fate, and about the power of one brave choice. When Alina was discharged from the hospital 2 days later, she thought life would go back to normal. She was wrong. Her small apartment felt quieter than usual when she walked in. The smell of old coffee filled the kitchen, and her cat meowed lazily from the windowsill. Everything looked the same, yet somehow nothing felt the same anymore. She sat on the couch, staring at the bandages on her hands, remembering the flames, the child's cries, the father's tearful face. It almost didn't feel real. That evening, as she poured herself some tea, there was a knock at the door. When she opened it, Daniel was standing there again, dressed more casually this time, just a plain shirt and jeans, holding a paper bag that smelled faintly of food. I wasn't sure if you'd eaten yet, he said with a small smile. Alina blinked, surprised. You didn't have to do that. I know, he said, stepping inside when she gestured for him to come in. But after what you did, I think dinner is the least I can bring. They sat at the small kitchen table. The food was warm and comforting, and for the first time since the accident, Alina felt relaxed enough to laugh a little. Daniel asked about her life, her job, and how long she'd been living in the city. I've been working at the diner for almost 3 years, she said. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills. I save whatever I can, he nodded thoughtfully. You live alone? Yeah, it's just me and the cat, she said, smiling faintly. I moved here hoping to study nursing, but I couldn't afford college fees. So I started working. Daniel leaned back slightly, his expression softening. You wanted to be a nurse? Still do, she admitted. But life had other plans, I guess. He looked at her for a moment, then said something that caught her completely off guard. What if I told you I could make that dream happen? Alina frowned, unsure if she'd heard right. What do you mean? He placed his elbows on the table, his tone calm but serious. I meant what I said at the hospital. I owe you more than I can ever repay. You saved my son. I want to do something meaningful for you. Not just money or gifts, but something that actually changes your life. I can cover your education. Nursing school, living costs, everything. You shouldn't have to give up your dreams because of money. For a moment, Alina didn't speak. She stared at him, the words echoing in her head. It sounded too big, too generous, too unbelievable. I can't accept that, she said quietly. You've already thanked me enough. This isn't about thanking you, he replied. It's about giving back. You gave me my child's future. The least I can do is help you build yours. She looked down, unsure what to say. The thought of someone paying for her studies felt wrong somehow, like she hadn't earned it. But at the same time, the idea of finally following her dream made her heart race. "I don't know, Daniel," she said finally. "It's just a lot," he smiled gently. "You don't have to decide now. Just think about it." They finished dinner talking about lighter things and the weather, the city, even the cat that jumped into his lap mid-conversation. Before leaving, he said, "You've been given so little in life, but you've given so much. Maybe it's time someone gave something back to you." After he left, Alina sat in silence for a long time. The apartment felt different again, not quiet, but full of thoughts. She picked up her phone and searched for nursing programs nearby. She didn't tell anyone what she was considering. She just thought about what it would mean to finally start something she'd dreamed of for years. The next few days passed in a blur. Her story continued to spread online, though she tried to ignore it. People called her a hero, but she never liked that word. Heroes were people in movies, not waitresses with second-hand cars and unpaid bills. Then one morning, she received a call from an unknown number. When she answered, a warm female voice said, "Good morning, Alina. I'm calling from the Hart Foundation. Mr. Hart asked me to reach out regarding the scholarship program we discussed." She froze. "The what?" The woman laughed kindly. "He's setting up a scholarship in your name, to cover your education, books, and expenses. He wanted me to confirm your details." Alina's heart raced. She couldn't believe it. Daniel had actually gone through with it without even waiting for her answer. Later that afternoon, she met him again, this time at his company's office. It was a tall glass building in the center of the city, the kind she usually only saw from a bus window. Walking through the lobby felt strange. People in suits, polished floors, the sound of clicking heels. Daniel met her in the reception area, smiling warmly as he waved her over. "Glad you came," he said. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," she admitted with a small laugh. He led her into a meeting room with large windows overlooking the city. On the table lay a neat folder with her name on it. "These are your scholarship papers," he explained. "Full coverage for your nursing degree. You can start next semester if you want. The foundation will handle everything." Alina looked down at the papers, her heart pounding. "This feels unreal," he nodded. "It should feel real because you deserve it. You didn't just act bravely, you acted with heart. That kind of courage deserves a chance." She took a deep breath, emotions swelling inside her. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't even know what to say." "Just promise me one thing," he said with a gentle smile. "That you'll use this chance to do what you were meant to do." She nodded, eyes wet. "I will." Over the next few weeks, everything began to change. Alina's life slowly transformed from quiet struggle to cautious hope. She started her admission process, attended interviews, and received her acceptance letter. For the first time in years, she had a real plan, a future that didn't feel impossible. Daniel checked in from time to time, asking if she needed help with forms or supplies. But their talks weren't just about school. They began to talk about life. Small things, funny stories, simple moments. Despite their different worlds, there was an easy understanding between them. One evening, Daniel invited her to dinner at a quiet restaurant near the water. It wasn't fancy, just peaceful. The sunset reflected on the waves, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. "I've been thinking," he said as they walked along the pier afterward. "When something life-changing happens, it changes both people involved, not just one." Alina smiled softly. "How so?" He looked out toward the horizon. "That day I realized I'd been so focused on success that I forgot what really matters. My company, my schedule, my meetings. None of it meant anything when I thought I lost my son. You reminded me of that." She looked at him quietly, hearing the sincerity in his voice. He turned to her and said, "I started a new program through my foundation. We're going to fund education for people like you. Those who put others before themselves but never get the same chance. And I want you to be part of it, not just as someone we helped, but as someone who helps others." Alina's eyes widened. "Me, but I don't know anything about running programs." He smiled. "You know about compassion. That's what matters most. The rest you'll learn." She laughed softly. "You really don't give people time to say no, do you?" He grinned. "Not when it's something good." As they stood there, the sound of waves around them, Alina realized something. Her life had shifted from surviving to living. From just getting by to building something meaningful. She didn't know what the future held. But for the first time, she wasn't afraid of it. When she returned home that night, she sat by the window, looking at the city lights. Her phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. "You gave me back my son. I'm just trying to give you back your dreams." She smiled, tears filling her eyes. It wasn't about debt or repayment anymore. It was about kindness that moved forward from one heart to another. And somewhere in that quiet night, she made a silent promise to herself that no matter how her life changed, she would always help others the way she had helped that little boy. Because sometimes one brave act doesn't just save a life, it changes two lives forever. The first day of her new life came quietly without any big sign or ceremony. Alina stood in front of the mirror, wearing a plain white shirt and simple jeans, a backpack slung over her shoulder. The acceptance letter from the nursing school lay on the table beside her. She kept looking at it as if she still couldn't believe it was real. When she stepped outside, the morning air felt lighter somehow. She took the bus across town, watching the streets go by, people heading to work, children holding their parents' hands, cars honking at every corner. It was all so ordinary, but to her it felt like the start of something she had only dreamed of. At the school she was nervous. Everyone around her looked younger, more confident, like they belonged there. But as the day went on, she found herself slowly fitting in. Her classmates were kind, her teachers encouraging. She listened carefully, took notes like her life depended on it, and stayed behind after class to ask questions. Every evening when she came home, she studied until her eyes burned. A few weeks into the program, Daniel called her. "How's school?" he asked warmly. "Tiring," she laughed, "but in a good way. I love it." "That's what I wanted to hear," he said. "There's something else I'd like to ask. Would you come by the foundation tomorrow? I want you to see something." The next day, Alina took the train to his office. The foundation occupied an entire floor of the building. Bright, open, filled with photos of children, families, and volunteers. The moment she stepped inside, she felt something familiar. A sense of purpose, of people helping people. Daniel was waiting by the glass wall, holding a few papers. "I'm glad you came," he said. "I've been working on a new project, a community program to support families in crisis. I want you to be part of it." Alina blinked. "Me?" He nodded. "Yes, not as an employee, but as someone who understands what it means to care without expecting anything in return. You'll help us connect with families, understand what they need, and make sure they actually get it." She hesitated. "But I'm just starting nursing school." He smiled. "That's exactly why you're perfect for it. You care, Alina. That's something no degree can teach." She thought about it for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, I'll do it." From that day, her life became a balance between studies and her work at the foundation. She'd attend morning classes, then spend her afternoons meeting families, helping organize donations, and visiting hospitals. It wasn't easy. Sometimes she came home so tired she could barely keep her eyes open. But she loved it. Every story she heard reminded her of why she had chosen nursing in the first place. One afternoon, while helping at a community center, she met a young mother who had lost her home in a fire. The woman sat quietly in the corner, holding her baby close, her eyes red from crying. Alina knelt beside her, gently touching her arm. "I know it feels impossible right now," she said softly, "but you're not alone. We're going to help you get back on your feet." The woman looked up, tears filling her eyes. "Why are you helping me?" "You don't even know me," Alina smiled faintly. "Because someone once helped me when I least expected it." That night when she got home, she sat by the window thinking about how life had come full circle. Once she had been the one running toward a fire. Now she was helping others rise from theirs. Weeks turned into months and the foundation's work began to draw attention. People admired the new initiative, and Daniel often mentioned Alina's name in meetings, saying the project's heart came from her story. She didn't like the attention, but she couldn't deny how meaningful it felt to see lives changing because of something she'd inspired. One evening, Daniel invited her to a small dinner at his home. When she arrived, the same little boy she'd saved came running toward her, laughing. He was taller now, full of energy, with the same bright eyes. He jumped into her arms and she hugged him tightly. "You remember me," she said, smiling. He nodded proudly. "Daddy says you're my hero." Daniel, who was standing nearby, smiled at the moment. "He talks about you all the time." "I think he believes you have magic powers," Alina laughed. "I wish I did. I could use some magic for my exams." They all sat down for dinner. simple, warm, and filled with laughter. It wasn't formal or distant like she'd imagined it would be. Daniel talked about his work, about the foundation's next plans, and Alina shared stories from school. There was comfort between them now, an easy friendship that had grown over time. After dinner, as they stood by the balcony overlooking the city, Daniel said quietly, "You know, I used to think success meant money and recognition. But after that day, I realized success is being able to give meaning to someone else's life. You taught me that." Alina looked out at the lights, her heart full. Maybe that's what life is supposed to be. People helping each other, passing on kindness. He nodded. Exactly. They stood there for a while, saying nothing more. Sometimes silence said enough. The following month, the foundation hosted a charity event to raise funds for their new projects. Daniel insisted that Alina attend as a guest of honor, though she didn't like being in the spotlight. She wore a simple dress, her hair tied back, feeling nervous as cameras flashed around the hall. When it was time for speeches, Daniel walked up to the stage. He talked about the foundation, the projects, and then paused before saying, "There's someone here tonight who changed not just my life, but my son's. Someone whose courage reminded me what truly matters." He looked toward Alina. The crowd turned as he gestured for her to join him on stage. She hesitated, but he smiled reassuringly. Her hands trembled slightly as she walked up and the room fell silent. Daniel continued, "Months ago, when my son was trapped in a burning car, she didn't wait for help. She became the help. And because of her, we're all here today, continuing her example of selfless kindness." Applause filled the hall. Alina's eyes glistened as she looked at the audience. People from all walks of life clapping, smiling, inspired. She never imagined this moment when she ran toward those flames that day. When the applause quieted, Daniel handed her the microphone. "Would you like to say something?" She hesitated, then took a deep breath. "I'm not good with speeches," she began, her voice soft but clear. "But I just want to say, sometimes life gives you one moment, one chance to do something right. You don't think, you just act. That moment changed everything for me. Not because I saved someone, but because I learned how much one person can do if they just care enough." She paused, scanning the crowd. "We all have something to give. It doesn't have to be big. A kind word, a little time, a small act. It can change someone's whole world. I'm living proof of that." When she finished, the audience rose to their feet. The applause was thunderous, but all Alina felt was warmth. Not pride, but peace. After the event, reporters asked for interviews, but she kept her words simple. "I'm not a hero," she told them. "I just did what anyone should do when they see someone in need." That night, as she sat by the window in her apartment, still wearing the bracelet the little boy had given her as a gift, she smiled to herself. Life had a strange way of turning tragedy into purpose. Her phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. "You were amazing tonight. You inspire people without even trying. Thank you for being part of something bigger than both of us," she typed back. "Thank you for believing in me." Before putting her phone away, she looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, someone else was facing their own fire, literal or otherwise. And she hoped that maybe, just maybe, they would remember that even the smallest act of courage could change everything. Because for her, it truly had. She wasn't the same woman who once drove home from a night shift, tired and invisible. She was someone who had faced fear, found strength, and discovered that kindness, real, honest kindness, could build a new life from ashes. And deep down, she knew this was only the beginning of what she was meant to do. The months that followed the charity event changed Alina's life in quiet but powerful ways. The story of her bravery and the work she did with the foundation spread beyond the city. People began writing letters to her. Strangers from small towns, students, single parents, all saying how her story gave them hope. Some said they had started volunteering. Others said they had forgiven people they once hated. At first, Alina didn't know how to react. She had never seen herself as someone who could inspire others. But as she read those letters, she realized something important. Her moment of courage hadn't just saved a life. It had started a ripple of goodness in people she would never even meet. One morning, she walked into the foundation office and found a small stack of envelopes waiting for her. The receptionist smiled. "All for you again," she said. Alina sat by the window, opening them one by one. A letter from a teenager who said he stopped hanging around bad friends. A note from a nurse who said Alina's story reminded her why she chose her job. She wiped a tear from her cheek. She never thought a single decision, one that took less than a minute, could reach this far. Later that afternoon, Daniel came into her office with his usual calm smile. "I just got an idea," he said. "What if we turned your story into something more permanent? Maybe a campaign, something that spreads awareness about courage, about helping others." Alina hesitated. "You mean me talking on camera?" He chuckled. "Only if you're comfortable. But it could reach people who need to hear it. You don't have to act or perform. Just be yourself." She thought about it. The idea of speaking in front of cameras scared her, but she also knew that fear shouldn't stop her. Not after everything she'd been through. So she nodded slowly. "Okay, let's do it." The filming took place a week later. The crew was small, a camera, a few lights, and Daniel sitting nearby quietly watching. Alina sat on a wooden chair against a simple background. There was no script, no fancy makeup, no rehearsed lines. When the camera started rolling, she took a deep breath and spoke from her heart. "I was just driving home that day," she said softly. "I didn't think I was anyone special. But then I saw a car on fire and I heard a child crying inside. I didn't have time to think. I just ran. I don't remember being brave. I only remember wanting that child to live." She paused, her eyes glistening. "Since then I've learned something important. Courage doesn't mean not being afraid. It means doing what's right even when you are. We all have that power inside us." When the video was released online, no one expected what happened next. Within days it went viral. Millions of people watched it, shared it, and commented about how her words moved them to tears. News channels covered it again, but this time the focus wasn't just on the rescue. It was on what came after. On how one act of kindness can start a movement. Messages poured into the foundation. Schools invited Alina to speak. Hospitals asked her to visit. Even companies started partnering with the foundation to support community programs. But through all the excitement, Alina stayed the same. She still took the bus to school, still studied late into the night, still spent weekends volunteering. Fame didn't change her. It only gave her a bigger reason to keep doing what she loved. One day she was sitting in a small cafe near the university, reading her notes, when an older woman approached her. "Excuse me," the woman said gently. "Are you the one from the video?" Alina smiled shyly. "Yes, I suppose so." The woman sat down beside her. "I just wanted to thank you. My grandson watched your story and told me he wants to be a firefighter. You showed him what real bravery looks like." Alina felt her throat tighten. "Thank you," she whispered. "That means more to me than you can imagine." Moments like that happened often now. Small encounters that reminded her she had done something that mattered. She never got used to it, but she cherished everyone. A few weeks later, Daniel called her to his office. "I wanted you to see this," he said, placing a folder on the table. Inside were plans for a new building, a training and resource center for young volunteers and rescue teams. At the top of the page, the title read, "The Alina Hope Center." She stared at it, speechless. "You can't name it after me," she said quickly, her voice trembling. "Why not?" Daniel asked gently. "You inspired it. You showed us what hope looks like when it runs into danger instead of away from it. This isn't just a name. It's a reminder that ordinary people can do extraordinary things." Tears filled her eyes. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll help us build it," he said with a smile. She nodded, still overwhelmed. "Of course I will." The project began soon after. Alina visited the construction site every week, watching as walls rose and rooms took shape. Volunteers came from everywhere, eager to be part of something meaningful. Some brought bricks with messages written on them, for courage, for kindness, for second chances. By the time the center was finished, it had become more than a building. It was a symbol of everything that had grown from that one moment: courage, compassion, and community. On the day of the opening, the crowd gathered outside the new center. There were reporters again, cameras flashing, but this time Alina didn't feel nervous. She felt calm, proud, and grateful. Daniel gave a short speech first. Then he turned to her and said, "None of this would exist without you. Would you like to say a few words?" She stepped up to the microphone. The same little boy she once saved now standing beside her. Smiling proudly, she looked at the faces in front of her. Workers, students, families, people from all walks of life went and began to speak. When that fire happened, I thought my life would never be the same again, she said. And I was right. It changed everything, not just for me, but for everyone who's been touched by this story. I didn't do it to be remembered. I did it because I couldn't walk away. That's all, and I hope this place reminds people that we all have that choice, to walk away or to step forward. She paused, looking down at the child beside her. This center isn't about me. It's about all of us, the people who care, who help, who believe that kindness still matters. When she finished, the audience clapped, not just politely, but with deep emotion. Daniel walked over, shaking her hand before pulling her into a brief, heartfelt hug. "You've done something beautiful," he said quietly. In the months that followed, the center became a hub for young volunteers. Some trained to become rescuers. Others learned first aid or counseling. Alina often visited to teach, sharing her experiences not as a hero but as a friend who understood fear and hope. Every now and then, she'd see the little boy running around the courtyard laughing with other children. He'd grown stronger, happier, a living reminder of why she did what she did. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Alina stood outside the center alone, watching the lights flicker on inside. She thought back to the night of the fire, the sound of sirens, the heat, the fear, and then to everything that had come after. She smiled softly. "It was worth it," she whispered to herself. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A message from Daniel appeared. "I just watched today's training session. You've built something that will last. Thank you again for everything," she typed back. "We all built it. Together." Then she put her phone away and looked up at the stars. Somewhere, another life was changing. Another person was finding courage they didn't know they had, and maybe in some small way her story had helped light that spark. Life had come full circle for her, from a diner worker living quietly on the edge of exhaustion to a woman whose name had become a symbol of hope. But she didn't let that define her. She still believed in simple things: honesty, hard work, kindness. As she walked away from the center that night, the sound of children laughing behind her, she knew something with absolute certainty. That courage isn't a single moment. It's a way of living, and once you find it, it changes how you see everything. The world still had its pain, its noise, its unfairness, but as long as people like her kept choosing compassion over fear, there would always be light, even in the darkest moments. And that was the truth she carried with her, the truth that changed her life, and so many others.